not that many people have the same name, so you know, like they'll get it. But yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah. I know my name is Erica with a K, and everybody spelled it wrong.
Nice.
And they don't give them. They look at it right there. It's so funny.
Yeah.
They look at it and they still spell it wrong.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah. I know my name is Erica with a K, and everybody spells it wrong. And they don't get it. They look at it right there. It's so funny. Wow. All of a sudden it said video not available.
I can see it. Don't worry.
Oh, okay, cool.
Maybe the world can't, but I can see it.
That keeps bringing me back to I like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony.
There you go.
You're right. Oh, wait a minute. That's you. I was watching your channel.
Oh, that's okay. I'm gonna find you on YouTube as we're getting started, so you might hear some background noise, and we're gonna share the video here.
Yay!
So let's find it.
That's what I'm doing too.
Boom, there we are. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna share it.
Some little blue screen is up. It's so funny how they do
Find you on
this.
YouTube as we're getting started, so you might hear some background.
There you go. So I'm just looking really not tech savvy today. This is awesome. Yay! Oh God, have you been experiencing, okay, Matthew, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, you too. I'm totally on the screen right now. I'm like sharing your video, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Because we're just raw. So are you in the trailer park, or do you consider this a visit outside the trailer park when you're with someone else on their show?
I often have a series of vague kind of descriptors that I use, and I think this one is come join us in a strange new corner of the multi-dimensional neighborhood or something, or I'll say in a strange turn of events, we are appearing in this location, or, you know, some kind of weird, awkward thing. But there we go. We are on Facebook. And also on YouTube.
Like
Let me find my Zoom window though, because you know how it is when you're off screen on Zoom and you might make all kinds of weird oh, there we go. Because like you know what I mean? Like you never know.
Yeah.
When you're not looking at yourself. But anyway.
You're fully exposed. So you hit this thing about being in Generation X. I'm in Generation X along with you. I understand. Yeah, I know how to use a rotary phone and a dial phone and a cell phone.
Totally. Wait, how about the stick shift car, manual transmission?
I did try that for a little bit in Germany until I got stuck on a hill, and I was just like, fuck it, I can't do this anymore.
It was a little bit weird. That is like one of the primary like learning points, like when you're, you know, like driving stick and you get on that weird hill and you're like, you know, like
the cars build up behind you and they're like, get out of the way.
Right? No, it's a fear-inducing moment. I had many of them, and that's no joke. Like for real, nobody has to deal with that anymore. I guess unless you're in Europe or if you're driving a truck, maybe.
Oh
but
God, they don't make sticks. What do they call it? Manual? They don't
manual. Some people call it, yeah. Who knows? There's a bunch of dumb terms, but I haven't seen them in a while. I mean, I know they're still out there, but I'm stuck in like, you know, Prius zone, so it's like a, you know, weird like computer car.
Bougie.
Not at all. It's like the worst one. It's like the most basic-ish shitty version of that car. So anyway, but yeah.
So, but kids who, you know, who really benefits, people who grow up on farms and they drive tractors, that's who learns how to drive stick shift.
Yeah, totally.
So they're lucky. They're so lucky. So I'm so happy to hang out with you. I know you're like, what the hell do you want to talk to me about? Like,
oh no, it's okay.
Were you suspicious? Like, you think
not at all. I've actually watched a number of your shows, and I always refer to them as Women of the Stars, because that was like such a cool title. I'm like, oh shit, Women of the Stars is on.
That's right. The womb of the man. Okay. So the universal stars are the womb of the man. I saw you talking about your 90s events of being in a band.
Oh yeah, it's very
What
true.
kind of band was this?
Oh man, it's really awkward to label oneself, especially when you have
Oh,
10 or more years to look back on that experience. And prior to what I do now, well, I guess prior to what I do now, I was working in, I guess, professional mental health. But before that, one of the other primary kind of what we would call identity stages in the human journey was, as I guess you could call it, a semi-professional musician, from the perspective of that was literally all I did. Not that it supported me very well, but it was literally the only thing I did for a number of years. And I guess if you wanted to call it a genre, that was very early 2000s. So I suppose at that stage we would have called it something. It was just this is going to be cringe for anyone that hears it. Kind of like emo indie rock, which is just like nowadays you hear those terms and you're like, oh God. But at that stage, it was, there was, the cultural zeitgeist was a little bit different. And so, but yeah, kind of unmarketable, screechy emo indie rock from the early 2000s.
and I guess that is appropriate because I was gonna say I didn't know you were a mental health professional at one time,
Mhm.
but you definitely come across as one in the way that you deliver on your show because you seem to really focus on that. Like I try to focus people on being present, living their life, living a good life, stop being in fear. But I definitely see where you're covering the dynamic of mental health. Would you do you feel like this is kind of what led you here? Like what led you into this multidimensional being? For some people during childhood, like I used to read psychology books and things like that. I was just fucking weird and I just thought I could fly, just strange things along the way. But what tell me about your path because I really don't know it. And that's why I was really glad to be able to sit and talk with you.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. So prior to working as a professional psychic, and I guess you want to call it multidimensional healer or whatever kind of cheesy new age term you want to add to it, because depending on who you ask, some people will say I'm a, galactic shaman. Other people say I'm a, healer. Other people say, I'm a professional, this or that. And so, at this stage, you call it whatever you want, but my primary occupation is working with what we would call non-physical, or in some cases, spiritual energy. Anything outside of the bounds of the physical body that interacts with us and has an effect on the self is usually the area in which we operate. And prior to that, I was doing a very similar thing in what we would call, the old world Western psychology modalities. I did learn some, formal hypnotherapy stuff and went through a number of trainings and, random stuff and certifications in the mid 2000s. But to be real, I don't use any of it now on any level. And I think for me it was kind of a 7-year cycle, which is weird because I have a lot of 6 to 7 year cycles in this life. It's been uncovered to me recently where I'm like, whoa, things have a certain number of revolutions before they turn into something else. But that was kind of the gateway that led me into understanding the empathic side of myself. But yet at the same time, I think I was born like a lot of us, super empathic, really, really weird, very, very open, lots of weird, bizarre experiences as a child. I was horribly addicted to anything that one could ever be addicted to, in this life. I mean, early on, and I kind of learned by the time I got to that stage of my journey in, the late 30s to early 40s, it was kind of setting me up for this big, realization that it was a lot more than these, wounds and distortions, and that there was some other, very spiritual or what we might call mystical thing happening. And so a lot of people have heard me tell this story, but in 2015, it was summer of 2015, I was working at a homeless treatment center for veterans in San Diego, California, just getting people into housing, helping people get their service connected benefits and, go through the processes of all that stuff. And it was going well. And I was doing this homeless outreach fair. And there was these older women there, and I was really bored. I was very toxic and just like, oh, this sucks. I hate this. And there was these old women, and they were set up in this tent. And I was just walking through, like, I got to avoid all my coworkers. You know what I mean? When you're like, I'm going to stay away from everyone and just walk around. And this lady came up and she was like, do you want an energy blessing? Right. And I was like, what the, seriously, I was like,
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I could sit down under that tent, right? Yeah, all right, yeah. So I just sat down, and a woman came over and she put her hands on my head like this. And, I kind of zoned out. I felt, you kind of get this feeling. And that was literally a turning point in my life. It opened my crown chakra before I ever knew what a chakra was. And within 30 days of that moment, my life had changed in such a way that I was never the same after that. It was like a walk-in occurred, what we might call a soul inbreeding. Another version of me was ignited within my body, and it led to an unbelievable series of events that I thought was insanity. I thought I was literally going crazy. I felt this weird opening in my head, and I remember looking out at San Diego City, and I was like, totally sober, just like tripping out on something. And I was like, what? And it's led to, so many events, weird beings showing up in my room in the middle of the night, dead relatives coming in and giving me literal healings while I was asleep. I've watched my body go through portals in the ceiling of my bedroom multiple times. I could smell it, taste it, hear it. And it was so crazy that I literally thought I was going insane. So I lived for about 2 years like that until I met some people within our greater community. And somebody recognized me and was like, you know what, you're not crazy, you're a psychic. And I've told this story a million times, there's a lot more to it, but essentially somebody recognized me and was like, there's nothing wrong with you, you're psychic, you're having an awakening type thing. And I was like, and somehow I believed her. I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I am. And lo and behold, it kind of helped me understand that a lot of the intensity, a lot of the darkness, a lot of the wounds, a lot of the insanity that I had been going through my entire life was really nothing other than, this incredible empathic opening in the body. And it fundamentally changed my life. And anyway, before I go on too long, it culminated in 2017 with me walking away from my marriage, the house I owned, the job that I had, every possession that I owned in this world, nearly put them on the curb, and I bounced. I literally drove to Los Angeles, California, and it's now 2023, and here we are. Now we're teaching people those very things. And so that's the short, dirty version of it. But
that magic number 2017. I thought I was going to lose my mind in 2017, but I didn't have a spiritual awakening. It was just Rothschild super highway in Mexico, a dot on the mailbox, and the bums didn't want to go inside the shelter. They're trying to kill. So, woo. And then I was talking to someone else, and their awakening was 2017. What a powerful time. It's really
well,
cool.
You know why? The why is a little bit different for everyone, but it has been widely recognized and observed through people within our soul group and community that in 2017, and also the year prior and just the year after, was one of the greatest gateway, or we could call activation years, in which a number of people who had pre-existing what we might call soul contracts — I know that's a cringe term for some people, but it's a real thing — number of people that had already gone through some form of a contractual agreement were going to go through a physical timeline shift. And so for those that are able and willing to open their minds to that possibility, what that means is that for a lot of us around that time period, we actually shifted into a different version of reality. We literally crossed a physical timeline. And what we've been doing since is getting to know the other version of ourselves, developing certain things, healing old wounds. Like you, it came with a lot of wounding and insanity for me, but it was a crazy time. And so
I'm going to tell you what else is really cool about it, because now that you're saying this, and pre-contractual, I'm an Army veteran, and I'm like, you work with veterans? So I'm like, okay, this is clicking. And I used to go to mental health a lot with my job. I thought for sure they should just let me leave this place because I'm in here every day. But I medically retired that year. They called me while I was sitting at my desk, and they just said, get out and leave. And I was like, it was like The Price is Right. Like, come on down. But I noticed when I was at work, I felt like, we're just going to be working. We don't spend any time with our kids. I drop my son off at 6 a.m. I pick him up. I sleep. After I get off work, I sleep and wake up to tell my son to go to bed. I was in no condition. And I was having severe blackouts at work where I would do things or say things, and people say, you just did this. And I was like, no, the fuck I didn't. I'm like in an argument with you that I did not do that. But whatever was here, it wasn't me. I'm arguing with people. And then they finally just get to the point that they send me home for the most arbitrary thing, carpal tunnel of all things. And all of a sudden I had all the time in the world to look at the computer to figure out it is true what I was thinking this whole time I was at work, that we're about to start paying for oxygen. This is where we're going. We pay for houses and we spend no time in them. And like nothing makes sense. So 2017 was this mind-blowing thing. And I saw you talking about Family Guy the other day, right?
Yeah.
I honestly, do you believe, so I personally believe like Family Guy, The Simpsons, American Dad, and Archer. Like I had this arc of once I watched this one and then I start watching that one, I can't go back to watching the other one. But I felt like they were something that kind of massaged us into like, this is political commentary. They're talking about Iraq. They're talking about everything that's going on around us. And they're really telling us this is disclosure type stuff, but people aren't really getting it. I don't know.
There were some cool nuggets in there, definitely. I guess that was one of the it's funny that you mentioned. I was talking about it on this live the other day because I used to be, like it sounds so dumb, but I'll say it, pre-awakening journey, such a dumb term. It was a lot of that stuff was a much bigger part of my life. And so this weird thing occurred for me right around 2017 in which, and it still carries forward to today, where I lost the ability. It sounds dumb, but I'll say it because it's true. I lost the ability to watch television and movies on any level, like really, truly, it was gone. And nowadays I try to look at stuff. I tried to watch some anime movie yesterday and I was like, I can kind of get through this, but it's like, I disconnected from nearly every single form of popular media. But that said, I think at an earlier stage of my journey, those were kind of more what we would call formative kind of social experiences. I will say though, I do remember the very first Simpsons episode in like, I don't know what, 1980 something. I remember watching it with my sisters when it first came out, when it came off of the Tracy Ullman show. So I remember my dad was watching that.
I remember Tracy Ullman.
Right. And then I remember I was like, whoa, there's this new show coming out called The Simpsons. I was so stoked for it. I was like so excited. And anyway, not that has anything to do with now, but yeah, those were some of the last holdovers from that stage. I'll say it now though, Family Guy's trash. It just turned into some woke. No, it is, dude. I'm sorry. It's woke.
It turned really freaky into everybody having sex with each other. Yeah, it turned into like something really strange.
Distorted. Yeah, but that said, I think those are all really good. Those are good examples of like the cultural zeitgeist, meaning the spirit of the times that gets expressed through popular media, through what we present as all of the streams of info and data that's coursing through, and they're very important. But anyway, watch out. I'll go on.
I'm gonna say this. I remember the night when Married with Children came on, and they were playing it all night long. And
totally, that song would start, and it's like, oh,
she called and complained and said she complained about it, and they laughed at her. They literally, I don't know how they did this, but on one of the shows, they laughed at her on the show for calling in to complain about Married with Children. And then Tracy Ullman, hello, Mom, it's Kay. Okay. No, I was with you. We were watching at the same time.
I would probably venture to say that whoever's watching this will be like, what?
You guys
when was that? What? I wasn't even born then. So maybe we're kind of like dating ourselves in a very awkward manner.
It's okay. I'll be 50 soon. So I'm
okay. All right, cool. Yeah. We're on the same page. Yeah.
I'm fine. Fine. And so that's amazing how she triggered you at the event, but that basically you just kind of got a healing because you were bored and you're like, if I get to sit down in this tent, then I'll do it.
No, that's purely what it was. I was like, I just didn't want to go back and fill out a bunch of packets of paperwork. I remember it specifically. I had this huge thing. I had to interview all these people. None of them wanted to be interviewed anyway. They just wanted free stuff. And I was like, oh God, why am I doing this? And lo and behold, I actually went back to those women and that group after that awakening, because I truly lost my mind to the extent where I would drift out of my body accidentally, which is a crazy thing to say. It happens. I did not even know that's what it was at the time, but in the days and weeks and months after that, it's like I could not stop myself from coming out of my body, and I would be doing things at work, or it happened at the gym most of the time, because that was the only thing that would keep me sane. I would just go to the gym and like walk on this treadmill or the elliptical and just like zone out. And this thing would happen where it's like I could feel myself come out of the top of my head. And at times there would even be like a like a pop, like a literal pop. And all of a sudden I could see everything around me. It was like a 360 degree view, which is crazy to think that. I've talked to other people that have had that. I have not experienced it since that time. But it was like, I remember standing there and I could see in the back of the gym, all the way in the way back corner, and watching a woman doing sit-ups. And I would be like, how is this possible? And there was nobody I could tell because I had no frame of reference. Right. I was like, who the hell do I tell? I'm supposed to be working in this field and I'm literally losing my mind over here. And luckily I went back to those women, and it turned out they were part of this meditation group or this kind of spiritual school that came from India, which, I'll be real, nowadays they're a literal cult. It's like consumerist, spirituality that just sucks your money in. But it was called Oneness University at the time. Now it's called some other random bullshit, but they were hardcore at the time. And I didn't understand that it was kind of a cult, because it was kind of a cult, but I spent two years with that group every single week, and I went through initiations with them. I learned how to do energy work with them. It changed my entire life. And then, one day, boom, the switch turned off, and I was like, I'm never coming back here again. I just literally bounced from it.
That's a graduation. I was just talking to somebody about this, because when you first start out among certain people, reading certain books or even watching certain channels, you spend a certain amount of time with it, but you're supposed to actually be on your way growing. Like even with the Jesus reference, like he would heal somebody and he'll say, go. It does. You're not supposed to follow people to the point where you just stay with them forever. You're actually supposed to graduate. I don't know about you, but did you have church in your background at all?
Oh yeah. Oh man. Hell yeah. That I was born in what I call a religiously addicted family, meaning that it wasn't even so much like a point of joy. It was like, you must, it was that sort of thing. And it was really awkward, not to make it weird and dark, but it was awkward because we ended up, my mom and my sisters at the time, we ended up in this church where it was literally just a molestation ring. It was literally a church of families that would share their children with each other on weekends and go stay overnight at everyone else's house. And you know exactly what was happening there. You can only imagine. And I was, by some strange stroke of luck, I was shielded from a certain amount of that other kids got way worse than I did. But what's wild is you would think that having all that kind of treatment at the hands of some form of organized like religion would make me hate it. And it didn't. It actually, I think, instilled a lifelong belief in my body and in my soul that there was a power greater than me that had, and, was able to have an impact, that had, some form of an ability on this earth plane that was literally real. And so it gave me some really good things and, this undying acknowledgement of, some sort of power. But it also, at the same time, completely disconnected me from any form of, religious structures later on. And nowadays, I absolutely reject them, absolutely on every level, which maybe that's some of my own wounding in there. But that was a really, really big factor. Reformed Presbyterianism. It's a fun one.
Wow. I know what you mean. I feel like it created a foundation of how should you treat people?
Mm-hmm.
How should people treat you? And there was certain scriptures that says write the scriptures on your heart. So when I would compare like what is happening to what it was like I was already doing the what would Jesus do thing in my head. And then I was like, they wouldn't do what we're doing in church. That's what Jesus wouldn't do.
Yeah,
it was like, oh, alarm. I describe it as this like this thing where it's like elementary school, and then when you really do learn what the books say, you look inward, then you look outward, and then you look at the organization you're in, and now you understand, oh, this is the key to get out of the organization, because this is not what the organization is about. It has the book, but what we're doing has nothing to do with the book. And then you graduate.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will look at us because we don't go to church and judge us. And it's like, yeah, but you're still in elementary school. You don't stay in elementary school all your life. You graduate, you move on to learning other things. It's really surprising.
Yeah. Totally agree.
And what, there was a reason I asked you that. I totally forgot. But anyway,
okay.
So now we're and you use the word community. And there's just some things I wanted to ask you about community and ascension. Because
Yeah,
would
totally.
you
Be real. You
say
can
there
ask me anything. Seriously.
is really a
No, really.
community? I mean, is there a community? Because what I see is like, okay, there's the UFO community, disclosure community, then there's, you know, like you say, there's a new age movement, and there's all these different things going on. When you say community, what do you mean? Or
That's a
who do
great
you mean?
question,
Or
actually. Wow, that's a very good question because I always ask myself kind of the same thing. I guess one of the ways in which I would define that is kind of this soul group of individuals that have a few common threads, a few common associations, many common belief systems, and also a lot of contrasting and conflicting belief systems. But I would call it the soul group or the larger community of people that are, at least on some level interested or a part of what we might call, and here comes some cringe new age terms, things like great awakenings or, disclosure stuff. And in a lot of other things as well. And so I kind of just see it as like the larger soul group of people that I have come in contact with through some form over the last 7 years. And maybe that's just like something that I've kind of like created and, defined in my own mind. But I think it's equal parts, everything that you've talked about there, everything from the secret space program people, which show up in my, in my bookings constantly, to, people that are just getting started. I've been getting a rash of people lately that are just, it's odd because they're literally leaving traditional religion and they're coming to this great conflict within themselves. Like, I realize I'm moving on to something else and I'm worried that I'll be judged by Jesus or God for stepping away from this. And so there's a really, really wide variance when I talk about like a community. It could be everything from, a bunch of woo-woo secret space program stuff to like the new age movement, to the disclosure people, to the nuts and bolts UFO stuff, to the patriot groups. Also, that's another
I
big,
know this is a big influx of patriots now.
yeah.
It's taken them a while because they were like, no, you guys are crazy. But then I'm seeing like more blending in of the patriots.
Yeah, I will be real. I have observed over the past 7 years of doing this work professionally that I don't actually fit in any one of those categories, not even close, any one of them. But I think that due to what I do and choices that I've made, and I think past life choices, and honestly, it sounds cringe to a lot of people, but it's a literal assignment that I chose to be placed within a community of people for very specific reasons. I don't know what they are. But I would say I have observed in the years since that it was literally what I was supposed to do because it carries me through everything. This work is the only thing that I do in this life at this point. So I guess maybe we're doing something right.
I think that's it. It's this lack of attachment to any one narrative. Because I think this is where people kind of get stuck. Like you like we said, you join one church or you read one book and you start watching one channel and then you get linked to staying with this forever, and it's like, no, that doesn't allow for growth. So we can't necessarily be stuck on any one narrative. So we can't necessarily be stuck thinking Trump is great. Like, well, he is what he is. There was some good things that happened, but I'm not definitively gonna say that, that my allegiance is with him. Because then also too, I noticed that when we take on one person, an allegiance with one person, suddenly, just like that group, they change. Mm-hmm. And then if you're not aware, you won't notice the change and you'll go down the wrong road. Like,
totally. Like consciousness gateways. I spent a lot of time in a big consciousness gateway when I first started in this community with the Corey Good people. That was kind of one of the big sort of entry points for me, because when that guy came out, I'm not even trying to aim it toward him, but when that guy came out, that was like, he was describing experiences and dreams that I had that I did not understand, that I was like, that was me. What are you talking about? And I came to realize that part of, his kind of, coming out was to help a number of people kind of understand certain things. Sure, it got twisted into something else, but that was kind of one of my big consciousness gateways, was I had to move through that stage of that community and go, wait a minute, this is kind of mostly bullshit here. Hold on. And I think that kind of happens with every one of those soul groups. As you move through it, you take the parts that work, you take certain understandings, you just rediscover pieces of yourself. And I think we'll even be tasked, each of us in our own individual manner, with overcoming certain things, with healing certain things, with having new realizations. And so I guess I'm one of those people that creates radical allowance, or rather, my intention is to have radical allowance when it's like we go through all these stages. There's going to be a period of several years where people believe literal fake bullshit about themselves. And then you come to this point where you're like, oh, now I get it. It was actually this. And I think we have to leave room for the process of self discovery. And I would like to think maybe that's one of the reasons why we continue to thrive, or maybe I should say survive, because sometimes we're just surviving in the thing that we do. It's because I will create radical allowance for each and every person's story. Like you come to the stage where you realize, you know what, this is absolutely literally real for what's going on in your life. And we learn how to deprogram or deconstruct or reconstruct or rediscern certain elements of that. I find that when we do that, when we kind of allow every one of those pieces to be placed on the table and begin to look at ourselves in a new way, you will move into entirely new stages of identity or understanding or all kinds of stuff. But anyway, watch out.
You have this fundamental understanding of who you are. Like there's this certain, I love that you said, because the law of allowance, this is something that people don't know. And when this thing all comes together, when you say community, right? And how you're, everything that you're saying is blowing me away, because I want to say this, because what happens is everybody feels that you have to believe everything they believe, you have to think what they think, you have to be friends with who they're friends with. Like they don't really allow room for individuality in this thing, because their idea of community is we have to be the same.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you would like to discuss that or address that, but I mean, you basically did. You just said it before I even asked you about it, because I struggle with this because I can be friends with you, but that don't mean I got to talk to your sister or
totally.
your mother. I don't have to be friends with everybody you're friends with. And you know, even this whole thing, what you said about movies, I feel like this about a lot of people's videos. There's some people's videos I will get up, I'm sorry, Dr. Sala, I watched his video. For some reason, I want to go wash the dishes. There's some people I watch their video and I'm like totally phased out. I can't connect to it. And it's either I'm not supposed to do it at that time, or maybe I'm not supposed to do it at all. But then people will look at you and be like, suspicious, you know, like,
you mean you're not following the narrative or something.
You got to be compromised.
Mm-hmm.
Or you got to be.
It's a fun word, right? It's like,
isn't it fun?
Everyone throws that one around. No one really knows what it means. Everyone has a different, like definition, you know what I mean? They're just kind of loose, like semi derogatory descriptive terms that we use to indicate people that aren't necessarily following our current narrative. And it's awkward because I follow very, very little of what most people are saying right now. But at the same time, I also it's like I also believe a lot of it at the same time. And I'm one of those people that it's like I reserve the right. And for some people, they don't like it when I say this. I reserve the right to call bullshit on anything at any time. And I also reserve the right to go, you know what? I realize I thought this was true yesterday. And here we are the very next day. And now I think it's this. And guess what? Tomorrow, I might have a completely different idea. If we can't edit ourselves and, follow the stream of what I think we're in resonance with and learn how to cut off the ones that we don't, how are we going to grow? How are we going to get better and understand who and what we're capable of? And anyway, I might just be kind of ranting indirectly.
No, you're not. But no, because what you're getting into is people pin themselves in boxes and labels with identity, and this becomes who they are in their identity. It's very fragile, because I think a lot of people this is why they'll suffer when they can't leave any kind of religion. They can't leave groups or religion, because now they don't have what they crave is stability. For me personally, I don't know if you ever done your birth cards. Like mine is the moon and the hermit. So I walk alone, but I'm able to walk in the dark. I don't have to know everything. People want things built up, defined, and they want to know all the terms. They want to know the future. They want to know. And so when you face the world with the unknowing, that is too scary.
Yeah.
So we have to be belonging to something and believing in something, and it has to have structure and definition, or else people suffer. because that's like saying, oh, there's a sinkhole under your house. I don't know when it's going to open up, but pretty soon, one day, and they're like freaking out, trying to find security. Me personally, I find more joy in the surprise.
Yeah, I
of
hear
life.
you. I have an awkward question.
Oh.
What do you mean by birth cards? You mean like through tarot? Which is weird that I'm even asking you this, because I'm like, I literally do tarot every day professionally, and I've never looked at my birth card. How do you calculate?
Oh,
It's
I
weird.
found a birth
That's all
card
I do.
calculator.
Really?
Yeah, there's a birth card calculator, and so when you add you add up separately, I think it's the month and the year, and it comes out with 2 numbers, and one of them, so for me, one of mine is the Hermit, and one is the Moon.
Does it correspond with what we like your life path number in numerology? Is that what it applies to?
I know that on what I say it corresponds. I'm not sure if
yeah.
I know that it's all done in the same place. I got it all done on the same site.
Oh,
so
really?
I know my life path number and all that stuff. I'll put a link in there, but I'll give him the link. But the birth card, it's told me. So I was like, okay, this is why people get so irritated with me, because I had a friend and everything. He has to know everything. And I'm like, it's a miracle, like every day I'm waking up and it's a surprise. I like synchronicities. That's fun. That's exciting, because I don't have to know everything, but I know whatever it is, like I hold on to my positive thought, keep walking, keep going. And then, I'm basically like living the life of the Fool card, I'm just walking and
Fool is one of the best people you can ever be in the world of tarot. Honestly, he's actually the most powerful being in the entire hierarchy of the world of tarot. The problem is they just don't always know it. And they might not know what they want. And they might not listen to warnings. But they're real. It's like you have there's nothing the Fool cannot do. Is which
right. A lot of people you have the optimism, and you have the tools inside your little bag, and you're off. And you got to
find out my birth card. Seriously, I literally do tarot every day, all day. Like literally did a tarot live stream yesterday. We're doing one later on tonight, and it's like you learn something new every day. I'm like, whoa! I never did my birth card. I feel like I maybe kind of looked at it briefly years ago, but I never really. I have no idea what it would be for me. Okay, tarot school. Damn. Okay.
Yeah, and then you put in your birthday.
Oh, you put your month and your day. Okay, nice.
All right, guys, you see it. Tarot's good. So I'm looking forward to finding out what it is.
Okay. I am as well. I hope it's. I shouldn't say what I hope it is. Hopefully, it's 5 of Swords. Although I'm a 5 life path, so maybe what if it was 5 of Swords? For anyone out there that's like, well, what's 5 of Swords? It's a highly unbalanced social interactive environment in which, there's lots of power, lots of, energy, but it's not always aimed in the right place. And it can, 5s can be a difficult stage. So anyway.
So I'm going to go ahead and disappoint you early. It's going to be in the major arcana.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because the numbers won't go past 22. Okay, it won't go past a certain number.
There's no way I'm a 5 of Swords. There's no way I'm a 10 of Swords.
No.
I'm a 4 of Pentacles. Those are people I might not want to be. Yeah, that's very good to know. Anyway,
it's so funny.
Watch out. I'll get weird into like tarot world with you. It's one of the only worlds I understand.
I love that though. I love it. I love that about you. So 2017. So you missed the 2012 wave. Do you remember what you were doing in 2012?
Well, actually, I do remember that was kind of one of the entryways into, when they went into the whole Mayan calendar thing in 2012. I was very much in the nuts and bolts ufology world, the ancient aliens kind of timeline at that stage. And, the truth of it is in late 2012, I believe the so-called, awakening, quote unquote, journey started for me organically, because I remember about summer of 2012, it's always dumb when I talk about this because it sounds so silly, but I actually felt in summer of 2012, I started getting a physical feeling in my body. And it actually felt like it was something was trying to tear its way through my skin or through the top of my head. Sometimes it would be through my shoulder blades in the back. It was like some force of energy was trying to pop out of my body, and it created mania. It created all kinds of craziness. And at that stage, I was working at the treatment center that I was at and doing my little thing. And I got so freaked out by it that I took time off work. Like we took like a month off of work. I went to Oregon like with my wife during at the time in December, and it was like I had to go through some crazy recalibration to the extent that I went and got on antidepressant meds and mood stabilizers. I went straight into like psychiatry, and I was like, I'm losing my mind, something's wrong. And they're like, oh well, you probably just have this bipolar thing. And like I knew that I didn't, but I was like, well, I'll just start taking a bunch of meds. And so in 2012, during the height of that kind of gateway opening, which for those of us that look back on it, often view it as an opening of a gateway rather than some finality. It was just another cycle that was coming around. And so in December of 2012, I definitely had a very bizarre occurrence, but I squashed it. And here's the reality. You can very effectively squash the waves of energy that are rising up in the body when you go through certain waves of timed activations, meaning there's going to be a growth or an evolution within the energy body. And I've heard other people describe it since then. They'll literally feel like something's bursting out of them. It takes different forms, but traditional psychiatric medications will very effectively slow down the spin of your chakras to the extent that you can block that awakening process. And by awakening process, from a mechanical or an anatomical level, often begins with an opening of the crown chakra, which is funny because at that stage, it was like I literally felt on days like my head was going to burst open with some kind of fire. I did not understand that it was Kundalini energy. I didn't understand that it was a form of like, because I had never heard of those things in 2012. I was just like, I'm losing my mind, and I went back and got on meds and went right back into normal world until that event occurred in 2015. And that lady touched my head. And that was actually the last time I ever took or engaged in any form of westernized medicine or any of those sort of constructs. It was like on that day, a switch turned off and it never, ever came back again. And it was crazy, man. Very crazy.
That's like mind blowing. The head set on fire, but I didn't have spiritual. I was just blown away with them super highways. I was like looking for cyanide pills, honestly, because I thought, oh right? My God, the Matrix, I was
dude, that's actually really good to say that, because during that stage, I went so crazy. It was like I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I was literally, I remember there was one day where I went on, for those of you guys that remember Craigslist, I was like, I didn't know where to get drugs anymore because I had been sober for so long. And I'm like, I'm just going to try to find some like heroin or crack. And like, I somehow thought I could go to Craigslist. That's how far away I was from that world. I'm like, I'm going to go find something, and, luckily I didn't, but you know what I mean? It was like, I was that crazy, kind of like you, where I was like, I will do anything to make this stop. Whatever it felt crazy and unnatural. And it was probably the most natural thing that could have occurred, but I feel you on that. People went through a lot of weird shit in those days.
So this whole thing, since we're talking about woo-woo terms, I mean, how do you feel about ascension? Do you feel like that's a woo-woo term? I mean, how would you define ascension?
That's a really good question. I think that a lot of us in our community have been led down kind of semi-distorted roads in terms of how we will choose to define it. And
we were going to fly, we were going to be superheroes.
It's a little bit of a different process for everyone. And I've also had people not get so happy with me when I say this, but from what I've seen in the work that I've done, and this is always a stupid thing to say, but from a professional perspective, which honestly doesn't really mean anything, you know what I mean? But from a person that works with these energies on a regular basis, I have observed what we call the ascension process as taking place when we die, when we leave this physical body in this physical lifetime. That is our ascension process. And yet at the same time, there's a number of what we will call activation stages, environmental changes, really, really big, massive consciousness gateways that we will go through in the physical body timeline as well. But in my personal belief, what I've seen, the ascension journey for Matthew takes place upon leaving the physical body at the time of death. And I'll be honest, I think that's going to be how it is for most of us, but it's also really haphazard to make that kind of an assumption. But does that say that I do not believe in the solar flash? I think we're going to have many solar flashes. I think every single time we have, some, flares popping off on the sun, we got a million solar flashes. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But from my perspective, the so-called ascension process is a deeply individual thing that takes place for each person at their own predetermined time when they leave this world. And I might be wrong. But
Do you know anything about this?
what? What? What we're seeing on the screen here? It looks like some hieroglyphs. Is that Set? I don't know. I don't know who that is, but yeah, tell me. What are we looking at here?
So they're weighing the heart against the feather.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. I should probably know this because one of the biggest kind of past lives that I've looked at, well, honestly, it didn't look anything like that, but that was actually a duty that I had within that time period. Only it was nothing like it was depicted here. It was actually horrible. And the whole weighing of consciousness and the weighing of the organs and the actual disassembly of the human bodies at that time period was real. It was also very, very physical. And one of the assignments or previous identity stages I had in the incarnational cycles was within what we might call a stage of ancient Egypt, in which I worked alongside actually the wife that I have now, Honora, and we were part of a group. You were probably there as well. That these were part of the duties that we had. And honestly, it was during a very difficult time on Earth, during a very horrible collapse scenario, and there was lines of people, 1,000 people long, trying to get in to see people like us so that they could go through some form of a dimensional shift or switch into a next stage. And the majority of people didn't. They would try to like buy their way through this process, or they would make certain agreements with, entities and whatnot. But the whole weighing of the heart and those things, while it was a physical thing, it was also very symbolic of like releasing the density that was, within us. And it was really bizarre because I've had such incredibly detailed recollection of those time periods. And it was a stage in which people would literally give you their children. They would bring you their children and be like, here, we're giving you our children so that we can go through this gateway or portal into the next realm. And it was a strange, strange time. I did not do well in that. Later on in some of those lifetimes, I got involved in really, really weird forms of magic and really, really dark stuff. And that's why I mentioned Set, because I think there was a time, during those in the pre or post-Egyptian kind of timelines where I was working very heavily with those negative groups as well, and a number of reptilians that were still walking amongst us on the earth plane at that time. And anyway, not to go on and on about it, but
not that you're going on and on about it, but the fact that you said that they would give you the children leads me to believe this is how we got this current system of child abuse. That
Yeah.
children right now, they're like fodder. I won't get deep into it. Everybody knows what's up. Like you said, we talk about these things without talking about them, but this is why children become fodder. And this is also, I don't know, I watched movies like Conan, and then there was oh gosh, the guy who he had the powers of the animal. Like he could see through the hawk's eye. There were some movies that I used to really like back in the day. And every time there was one of those movies, somebody was throwing a kid in a fucking fire, sacrificing a kid. And so it's like, I don't think we realize. So here it is, people now will say, oh, these things aren't happening to kids. But it's like, do you not realize how many movies we watch with child abuse in it, where the wicked woman is giving the child an apple? Yeah. Or like Pinocchio, we're gonna take the boys to an island.
Right. Pleasure Island, totally.
Yeah, or they're gonna, or these old movies where they're throwing a kid into a pit of fire for a sacrifice. And I don't think like we watched them, but it didn't click like, hey, this is kind of effed up.
Right.
Yeah, Beastmaster, that's exactly it. I remember Beastmaster. I mean, these movies, they had a little bit.
Well, oh yeah, okay, I remember that.
Salt. One thing you might not. This is just totally off subject, so I don't mind if you get off subject.
Oh no, it's okay. Go anywhere. Seriously, maybe we should get off all that. Somebody's gonna get me.
Clairol black dye. That was a tiger, and they dyed it black because they changed their mind about what kind of animal they wanted. They dyed it black, and that tiger died from the dye from Miss Clairol. Because in some of the scenes, you'll see that he licked it, and you can see the stripes. So anyway, like they just, we're just like off, but people don't believe things. But anyway, So, yeah, we really went off. We did.
Oh, good. Like if
So,
you're hanging out with me, you're
your
gonna go on a bunch of
observation.
weird like off ramps into bizarre shit, and then suddenly go, "How did we get here?" And then we'll turn back.
Yeah, yeah. Well, honest too. Did you? Well, so you don't watch movies. You didn't watch Moon Knight then?
What? Moon
Moon
Knight?
Knight on Disney Plus. It's a
I
good.
saw I've seen like little stuff over like YouTube. I can watch stuff nowadays. Usually I do well if there's a chat thing that keeps me engaged, which is why it's easy for me to look at people's like YouTube channels now. Because if there's like a live chat going on, I'm like, okay, I can stay with this because there's a level of like interaction, which that might just be like a brain like damage thing. I don't know. I'm not saying it's cool, but
We're
I feel very
pretty
cut off.
stimulated mentally. We're pretty
Yeah.
hyper stimulated. Like me, I can barely read at this point. So I know I'm
Sorry.
struggling with reading. So I definitely struggle with editing certain. Like I had something to write for Iris the other day, and I was like, "Oh my God, I can't read, so I can't write." So I had to like dictate it, and then so in Moon Knight, this creature up here, she should have like a hippopotamus bottom and a alligator head. And what happened is, instead of allowing Anubis to weigh the heart, she's decided to judge people before their time. That's basically the premise of it. So she's out of balance and she's just going around eating the hearts before it's time.
Yeah.
And I'm like just learning who Amit is. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, now I understand. I watched the whole Moon Knight and didn't know,
That's
like,
cool.
who is Amit? Like, who is that? It never
Yeah.
occurred until I actually went to Egypt. But anyway.
It's really cool though. I'm horribly out of touch with all those things. It's like, which on some hand is good because I think a lot of the information and things that I talk about, it's like, it's cool because I get to see it like reflected back when I pick up the parts that are true, because I have very little influence from popular media on any level, even history. It's like, I don't know anything about anything. And it's not that I didn't previously, but post 2017, massive chunks of my life or my memory are erased. And I don't mean permanently. It's just like something overwrote a bunch of stuff within me. And so I know very, very little about a lot of that stuff now, and which I guess is cool. It's also awkward, I think I'm a really good example of pure intuitive, in that if people knew the level to which I operated in this world on pure intuition, they would either be really excited or deeply frightened. Because no, for real though, it's like you'd either be like, whoa, or you'd be like, oh my God, really? Because it is literally, I'm like, well, it feels like this, boom,
Not that I'm at that level, but I understand what you mean, because in 2009, I stopped listening to music completely because I didn't want the interference. I was going to film school at the time and I wanted original thought. And I think people don't really understand like the importance of having original thought.
It's very, very helpful. I think it kind of helps unlock other doorways to knowledge that cannot be, received through, observation or osmosis. It'll be reawakened within the body. And not to make it weird and anatomical, but if anyone knows me, they'll know I'll make it anatomical. There's literal passageways and channels within your body that will activate when you begin to remove cultural and societal influence and start to use your vital life force energy in a different manner. And what will happen is it'll actually help you unlock past life data, past life information. It helps us, it helps us astral travel. And it's called the Chiang Mai, or the central thrusting vessel. It comes up from the perineum right down there in your bottom. And it's like a little corkscrew of energy that wraps around the spinal column and internally of the body and kind of shoots out the top of your head. But as you purify and kind of, probably the wrong word, but cauterize your consciousness, meaning burn away things that are no longer, or close doorways, that channel will activate and people will begin to spontaneously remember and receive data that is, yours. It'll be in what we call the astral realm, for lack of a better term, or maybe in the shared fourth density space. But for a lot of us, that data only comes in when we remove a bunch of stuff from the outer world. And anyway, it's a very, very real thing.
Totally makes sense. And I love that you're making it anatomical, because I like to look stuff like this up.
Oh yeah, please do look it up. Central thrusting vessel. Very, very.
Yeah. ever since elementary, maybe middle school, I worked, well, middle school, I worked at the flea market and I used to just collect psychology books because I was like trying to just understand everything. Andromedan says hello to Matthew. Scott said TJW, Lakeside Laura, Chaos Smith. Robert Earl said hey.
What up?
Yeah, and I love you guys. And I'm really enjoying that. Okay. Yeah, because I really wanted to focus on original thought. And I think a lot of people don't really understand, like, this is why your emotions are so confused. When did you become aware of your emotions? Like, when did you become alert? Like, wait a minute, is this me? Is this not me? When did you begin to question?
Wow,
was it around that time? Was it around that same time? I think that would probably.
That's a really good question. I'm not sure how to answer it, but I can tell you that very, very early on in my life, like very, very young, I noticed that there was a very distinct type of power with my emotions, and it sounds dumb to say it, maybe that's the wrong choice of words, but there was an effect. There was an effect that would take place. It's funny because my wife has it so much stronger than I do, but it's like if you have a feeling or an intense wave of energy within you, the entire world, the people around you, the environment will feel it. I remember getting, ridiculed and belittled at many stages during my early life because it was like I would get angry and weird things would happen and people would feel sick and I would get sad and people would be like, what's wrong with you? It's like it would bleed out onto other people. And so I think that maybe I recognized some of the power of that earlier on in my life. And those were some of the things that I think led me into addictions because, for me, it was that I needed to turn something down. Something needed to get turned down inside me. It was like on 11 from the time I was born. I remember being in like 6th grade when I was going to this hyper Christian school and I would walk past people and I would get bullied, not too much, but I would kind of get messed with. And I remember walking past people and I could smell and see them in their houses, like in their beds, sitting in the back of the truck with their grandpa while he was doing some weird, gross stuff to them. And it was like, I did not understand what those things were. And what I noticed was that there would be these crazy waves of emotion that would come through me. And I did not understand it was me absorbing other people. I had no frame of reference. I just thought I would imagine things and I'd be like, whoa, I see so-and-so. And, it led to me discovering certain things about people. It led to kind of weird realizations, but I think it also led me to this path where I realized I needed to turn something way down. And so that was around, later on as I hit high school, I discovered opiates. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. This makes everything better. We'll just do this from now on. And so anyway, I don't know if that answers it, but it was very apparent early on that something was irregular with me.
Right. So it sounds like because you were a mirror, you irritated them because the mirror, they were like not enjoying that effect. There's a movie like that. I don't know if you heard of it. It's a book too, but it's called like Water for Chocolate.
I do remember it. Absolutely. That came out during the stage of my life when I was still, like a part of that scene. So yeah, I definitely remember it.
Yeah. So for anybody who hasn't heard it, it's like when she cooks, the love energy she has is in the food. But if she's not feeling good, she makes everyone sick. And that's basically the summary of that. So I did enjoy your version of Ascension, even though like there's this thing called the Flynn effect. I don't know if you've heard about it.
The what?
The Flynn effect. So the Flynn effect says that as we become more intelligent, we affect at least 6 people. Those 6 people affect 6 people. So there's this percentage of intelligence growth on the planet that happens in waves as each one of us becomes affected, like especially us with channels and stuff like that, but definitely with the solar flare. So I think maybe what happens, this Flynn effect is what's being labeled as ascension instead of actually what you're labeling, because that honestly what you said makes a lot of sense. As how do you ascend when we're not necessarily ascending, but we're gaining intelligence.
I hear you.
Solar flares and so forth. So that definitely makes sense.
Well, maybe there's a physical ascension and there's also a consciousness ascension process that takes place as you're talking about within what you're calling the Flynn effect. Like so maybe that ascension journey takes many forms, for each individual. Maybe there's a physical one, consciousness version. There's maybe many different versions, or maybe I'm just making it overcomplicated. I don't know.
No, I like how complex your brain is.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what do you think about NPCs? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, is that
Oh,
a
the
real?
non-playable characters.
Yeah.
That's always a weird one. I've talked about it off and on over the years. I'll tell you my personal belief. I believe that there are many human physical beings that incarnate on the earth plane that do not have souls. They are like container beings. They're just part of their journey is to be backdrop and filler for larger processes and movements and things that take place on the earth plane. Does it mean, that every life is not sacred? Because I've honestly said this on somebody's podcast and they're like, what do you mean? You mean you're just trying to say that those lives are meaningless? No, that's not what I'm saying. In fact, often as soon as one places their gaze or inserts their consciousness, into observing those background people, they actually can often take on a path and, they can actually become ensouled at many different stages. But it's, in my opinion and experience, literally real. There are a number of beings that exist on the earth plane who are just backdrop and filler. And some people can look at that as a very cutthroat way to view things, or we could look at it as, one of many stages that, humans and souls go through during the process of consciousness evolution. And but it's always a really dicey thing to try to describe, and everyone's got their own viewpoints on it. But and anyway, yeah,
I don't think you're off. I think because like for right now, like my son is completely detached from things and doesn't look at anything. And I tell people that I know that at some point he'll be activated because currently he's in stasis. And so he's running a loop where this is how he survives inside this loop, or he's hiding inside this loop because it's not his time to be activated yet. Like, I feel like at some point we've probably all been an NPC.
Maybe
in someone else's life, possibly.
I wonder though. I kind of wonder, maybe, and maybe this is just an opinion, but I would venture to guess that just by being linked to you as an awakening person, as his mom, maybe he's just not at the stage where that form of energy or that wavelength of consciousness is even relevant to him yet. And I don't know that would necessarily classify one as being in an NPC stage.
Right.
But I think that maybe we will be in stages where, we might be, quote unquote, still asleep, or, still in hibernation. Maybe consciousness is still incubating, within the body.
Yeah.
Which I guess, to clarify, in my opinion, I think that would be different from what we would call it NPC. And those will be honestly people that we will encounter in the world in positions of indirect, strange authority, background people, officials, bureaucratic identities, even a number of celebrities, people that are kind of placed and kind of seen, and they will be highly controlled. And I think there's always a chance that something can step in. And I think that's also one of the things that we will come to understand as we leave this world, the level to which the soul and our consciousness moves in and out of the body during the human journey, and constantly traveling, and where our true consciousness is not, as we all know, not even within this vessel. It's just an antenna that's conducting or picking up the version of us that exists on other planes, or at least that's how I see it. And so anyway, I might have took that response and twisted it in a weird place, but
who knows? I know this because you're making me think about, there's these times where we've been on autopilot and we haven't, it's like click, like we've been on autopilot, like the times when we didn't remember anything and people say, you did this, you said that, and you're like, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe those.
I've certainly had that as well.
Yeah, I've definitely had it. I've had people scream in my face, and I've been called pretty much dingy a lot of my life, and I don't remember a lot of my life. I don't remember all my near-death experiences, but I remember what I know is the stories that people have told me of the things that have happened. So yeah. During this time, would have been some of the, because you've been around, would have been some of the positive predictions that you've seen actually came true? Anything that impressed you that you saw? I don't know. Do you even believe in predictions when it comes to this whole thing? Because people were on high alert, like say 2020, 2017 on, really, honestly, like this is going to happen. And
have there been any positive things that I have foreseen? how will I phrase this without sounding dumb? Doing what I do on a daily basis, I have learned, and then this might sound dumb to some people, I am not a psychic that revels in predicting the future. I think that our future, or what I have observed once again, because, as soon as you start talking about this stuff, everybody's got an opinion nowadays. Everyone's an expert. I say this all the time, so it's just a silly thing. But if you don't know everyone, all you got to do is do ayahuasca on Friday, and by Monday, you're now a shaman. Okay, that's all it takes based upon our current, environmental standards. And so everyone's an expert, right? But what I have, I almost forgot where I was going to go with that, but what I have observed in terms of futures is that we are constantly creating and destroying our futures in every moment of this daily life based upon our choices, our desires, what we're choosing to focus on, what we're choosing to ignore, what we're choosing to embrace. And so I think what I've observed is that there's an infinite number of realities or timelines. And I know that goes against what some influential people say. They're like, well, there's only 3 timelines. And, honestly, I believe there are absolute infinite numbers of reality. And so I don't really put a big emphasis on predicting what's happening on Earth from a collective level. Although I'll be honest with you, I did literally see and it wasn't just me, but we did see what we call like the kind of gender switching timeline happening. That one definitely was forecasted by many, many of us. Absolutely, all the way down to men getting pregnant. I remember saying it like a year or so ago to Honora, and I was like, get ready, in the next year men are going to start getting pregnant, and we're going to see this crazy turnover of like gender on the earth plane, which it doesn't matter what your viewpoints are on it, it's just a thing that's happening. And so there's certain collective movements that I've been able to see coming up, but most of my focus is on the individual and on the people that I encounter in private sessions above all else. And so I'd say I'm not, like I said, I'm not really a psychic that forecasts the future. What we're looking at is probable futures and possibilities. But for people that have done sessions with me, I have this cheesy saying. It's like, we are looking at our timeline and where we are positioned on the multi-dimensional game board. What direction am I pointing? What might come before or after? It's not predicting anything. It's just saying, what is my position? And it's not about, deciding the future. It's about, what do I need to do to create that future? Or at least that's how I would like to, define what it is that we do. But I would say most of my focus, though, when we look at collective stuff, has been on remote viewing, kind of the weird events and kind of control structures, which, I'll be real, looks like it's only going to get worse. I know everyone has this statement where they're like, no, the light is winning. All the negative beings are gone.
I was going to ask you about that, because
all the reptilians are gone. All the grays are, it's like, no, they're not. They're stronger than ever before. And the balance of our planet is such that those energies cannot and will not ever be eradicated from the earth plane. A lot of people don't want to hear that. But Earth is a realm of duality. We come here to experience the lightest light and the darkest dark. And without both of those 2 ingredients, there's very little catalyst for change, very little. And so that's never going to go away. I hate to say that, that's my viewpoint only, but I do think it's really simple for a lot of us as we open up energy centers, and kind of probably the most important thing for psychic activation is know thyself first. Once you know that, I think it's very simple to look at kind of where the collective consciousness is leading us. And so anyway, I hope that made sense. I feel like
it makes total sense. One thing, because you said this thing with gender, I think a lot of people, they observe so much. They're trying to take in everything that's going on, but I don't think it's necessary. I don't have to focus in on these things, but I do see the relevance in it. When I understand that, okay, so women have been abused, children have been abused, the label of boys play with tools and girls cook in the kitchen, play with kitchen sets. It's such an extreme definition of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman, that they've gone to the complete polar opposite, and that the boat has to be rocked. And it takes what you see, this extremely strange thing going on the left, to break down what's going on the right. And then eventually somewhere the norm sets in the middle, where people don't really see, they think it's unnecessary, but evidently these things are necessary.
Yeah.
Because all boys don't want to play with trucks and tools and whatever.
I didn't. I never did. You know what I mean? I'm like, no.
Yeah, we had such a rigid definition of the woman cooks and cleans. Well, some people will dislike that movement, but then they see it's all necessary, but I don't have to watch it the whole time. And I think that's where it settles in, where people are just kind of freaking out and like everybody wants to talk about it. I mean, I rarely can we ever have a conversation with anybody unless the trans movement comes into the topic.
It's part of
It's
the
really
times,
strange.
man. It's part
It's
of the
really
spirit
strange,
of the
but
times.
it's hard not to observe it. So what has been one of the biggest fails that you've seen, like when it comes to predictions? And I venture to say what you're saying about the light has won. I always felt like the same way the government watches us, they watch our Facebook posts and our YouTubes, and they're looking to see what it is that we want, and they want to feed it to us. And that they really generally have people who are telling us this thing about the light has won because they don't want us outside setting things on fire. Like,
No, that's a good point. I also think it's a really good example of a spiritual bypass and spiritual salesmanship, which is probably, in my opinion, one of the things that is a great disappointment to me. And when we talk about, maybe like failures of, foresight, I definitely did not foresee the amount of absolute bullshit spiritual salesmanship that was going to pop up in the very soul group that I'm in. I just did not see that coming, but I also didn't see a lot of other stuff. When I started doing, professional psychic work, I thought the world would think it was cool. I thought people would go, oh, really? You're doing that? Oh, that did not happen. You know what I mean? Absolutely not. I got more like maligned and like ignored and unseen and unacknowledged and pushed on the side, after I made that choice than I ever did before. And so, there's lots of things I did not see coming that, were there. But I think everything that's happening on Earth right now, and it's funny because I had a whole pre-programmed thing I was going to say there and it got deleted, but which is probably good because that means it was going to be needlessly inflammatory. But I really truly believe that what's going on Earth at this stage is absolutely what's meant to happen. I think that, like I said previously, our journey on Earth is never to destroy the dark. It is never to rule solely with the light. It is to come to balance within the self and to make a choice within your soul in terms of who you choose to be and what you choose to kind of bring into your world. And I say that as, what we might call an adherent of the law of one, which states very, very clearly the law of one blinks at neither the light nor the dark. It is available for all. And so I think that is one of the fundamental truths that we experience on Earth, is that it's about balance and it's never about eradication. It cannot happen. And so I think everything that happens here is not by, it's by design. You know what I mean? Nothing happens on Earth by a mistake. And maybe that's the choice that I'm making to, observe it as that. But yeah, I think this is the greatest place that we could have ever come to do a human journey.
It's kind of hard because like people will say Thoth is bad or this being is bad, and it's like, is it really? Because here we are supposed to be like trying to break the lines of the duality, but it seems like people will keep pushing further into the corner of it. Like with Thoth, for example, I would say, like, if your uncle was, or let's say your grandfather was a serial killer, but he left you 1,000 acres, would you still take the inheritance that you
Yes.
have?
Absolutely. Why shouldn't you?
Right. So people will say, well, this particular being is bad, but that is a part of your soul group, soul family, bloodline, or galactic family. And you still have an inheritance. Do you want to take it, or are you going to leave the check on the table? So I pretty much try to step back from being like, this being is bad. It's hard when you got people like HRC and like our government type officials.
Okay, Hillary. I was like, wait, oh no,
Yeah.
it's okay. They don't know. It doesn't
I'm
matter.
telling you, one time I almost had a heart attack. I watched one of those videos about her, and I would sleep with a knife in the bed. I was like, oh my God, she can see me. Like,
Actually, that's a really good example of, people like that, and people. Who's a couple other people in notable places of society that have that's a really good example of a person that has a non-human entity existing within the physical self. We saw it with the Queen of England. Other people in Congress and politics that I have observed, it's kind of the same entity or frequency that will bounce around between people during some of the weird Trump upheaval stuff. Adam Schiff is a good example. That's a literal entity living inside a human. As we know, like the Clintons, a number of people in notable places have been inhabited literally by
and
walking.
people can tell you an account of they can smell them.
Yes. Sometimes
I
you'll
had
smell.
somebody drive Obama to the from the airport to the inauguration, and she could smell him.
Oh yeah, it's Baphomet.
Freaked out.
You will see it in his face. It is a Baphomet type of being. Baphomet being, the goat being the, a lot of people say it's satanic. It's not. It's not actually
It's beyond
satanic.
that.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. I would call it more of a Luciferian energy, which some people hate this, which also in and of itself is not inherently evil. So a weird one to grasp onto, not saying that we agree with it or that we embrace the lifestyle or the vibration of it, but it's not inherently evil. It will have many anti-life qualities.
It's all a part of source, right? It's all a part of source expressing itself.
But yeah, Obama, in my professional opinion, and what's weird is other people have seen this before I could even tell what it was, and I did not understand it, but that's a very good example of the Baphomet energy. Another version of that would be Jeff Bezos. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm naming too many names. But anyway, there's lots of people that, you will literally observe a non-human energy that exists within that, and absolutely real. They'll usually be in places of power. That's usually the cost. You give away a piece of yourself and you rise. And anyway.
Yeah, we're not saying be friends with them, but it's like this. What is it? Because it's like preventing the negativity inside of you. It's preventing this fixed negative thought process inside yourself towards the people and the things. Because then all of a sudden we make that into the enemy when that's not necessarily the target. Like these things exist in the realm, but I don't know. Does that make sense what I'm saying to you? It's like they exist in the realm, yes. You can't attach to them and you can't.
They have to exist here on the earth plane. And maybe that's just my opinion, but it's like these beings and these energies, these frequencies must exist on the earth plane. This is where they come to live out.
Or else there would be no game to play.
Oh, no, exactly. And they talk about that in the law of one. It's like we come here with maximum catalyst for change. And what is catalyst? Those are the things that come in, the lightest light and the darkest dark, the thing that causes us, to question our path, to change, to heal, to confront the self. In some cases, we're just looking at, like reflections of ourselves in the eyes of others. And anyway, I'll watch out because I'll go on and on in a weird area as well. But anyway.
I love it. Yeah, we should never smoke weed together because that would be awful.
It's weird. I recently quit smoking weed. Strangely, I hate to say it, because I was never one of those people. I was always like, this is just a thing I'm going to do. But recently, I had to absolutely stop smoking. I felt myself getting really clogged up. I felt inflammation in the body. My blood sugar spiked really high to the extent that I thought I had like diabetes. My kidneys started getting clogged up. And I did not know what it was. I had no idea. And I'm like, it couldn't be that.
It's new, it's different, it's changed. It has a spirit. And I was thinking this about even mushrooms, like they have a spirit of their own. So when you're doing this, that thing has its own existence and it has its own desires, it has its own thoughts. And now you're trying to coexist with it. And if you're not acknowledging like, oh, I just let a whole nother person into my being, basically, I think it's something. And then too, now that it's legal, I'm like, ooh.
I feel you. I gotta say though, I'm not a weed hater. I absolutely love it.
I'm not even a smoker.
If it didn't have Right. If it didn't have a negative effect on me lately, I would still be smoking weed constantly. It's just
Yeah,
the reason like spirit showed up and it was like, okay, somehow I got the strength to stop. You know what I mean? I was
you're
like, okay, I
good.
just
It's
don't
kind of
feel like
like
I can do this.
too. It's kind of
Huh?
like buying crystals too. It's like not I'm not telling people to stop buying crystals, not all, but I'm saying there reaches a point where you're like, do I need any more crystals or am I good? Because we have these external tweaks
Yeah.
and things that we think we need, and then it's like, okay, we're beyond that now. We're actually beyond that. Like,
Yeah.
I needed this before for
It'll
whatever
definitely
reason.
come back. I promise. I'm like, you,
Yeah.
it'll be back. But for now, I'm like,
Can you read this word?
Pollyannaism, Pollyannaism, right?
Do you know what that is? Someone asked me previously, do you think, do you consider that as spiritual bypassing? So since you had brought up spiritual bypass.
Pollyannaism. I would define Pollyanna. Maybe there's an individual definition for that. It sounds like or feels like, from an empathic perspective, they would be describing a person that is choosing to look at only certain good things and ignoring certain bad things, or allowing themselves to stay in a stage of maybe energetic or some form of sheltering, or you know what I mean, where like maybe a somewhat of a
Yeah, when
naivete
you make excuses for people, like,
for
oh, well, she's
that.
not so bad. She just
Maybe I
she's
don't
just
know what I'm
like
talking
that.
about.
That's just how she is, Yeah, it seems like you're
Hearing.
just only remembering the pleasant parts, right?
Yeah, okay. That makes better sense than what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Indicates that an unconscious level that the mind tends to focus on optimistic. You
Mm.
know what happened? We were having a conversation because I was talking to a drama coach, and we were talking about the movie Inside Out, and how Joy always wants she wants to skip all sadness, and she's like always taking the wheel. Every time something bad happens, you want to make a joke or you want to lead out of the darkness instead of just experiencing all your emotions. And you being a person who dealt with psychology, with helping the veterans and just dealing with psychology overall, it seems like throughout your whole journey there's this time when we want to be optimistic, and I think that's kind of what they're doing when they're saying, oh, the light has won, because you really don't want to deal with the fact that, guess what, no, the light has not won, and people are still taking, they put certain things on the chart that kids have to take it before they even go to school now. And I
Mhm.
remember on the day of the last convention, this convention I went to last year, on the day of, they were all talking about the light this and the light that, and I was like, how the fuck is that
Yeah.
at the light? Because now they just made this official, all the kids have to take this now. And I was like, no, the light has not won, the government has not changed, these things are still happening. But my thought was this: even if Earth was all cleared, there's still a battle going on beyond Earth, isn't it?
I believe so. But I think it depends on maybe how you define that, or like what, your own understanding of it. And I
So
would even go so far as say it's not so much that, and this, once again, these are just opinions that I'm giving here, but it's not so much that, we're not in a situation where, the light can't win. I think there will be many notable victories, many corner turns, many also great defeats along the journey. And there's, in my opinion, once again, it's not a be all end all overcoming of anything. It's a balancing. And so I think it's important to hold on to elements of, for lack of a better word, hopium, where it's like we're going to choose to believe that good things are happening, because also when we choose to believe that that's happening, that helps manifest it. And so I think there's many reasons, and, lots of really good energy behind holding those beliefs. I think maybe just I'm one of those people that makes an active internal choice to look at more of the full spectrum of everything. But I think that's always how I've always been that. I'm very comfortable
but
with
that's why
that.
you're like in the emo crew, and
Yeah.
you're kind of the guy who's, you know
I
what
just
I mean? Like people find us depressing because we talk about reality sometimes. I mean,
yeah.
sometimes I get tired of fucking telling the truth. I get tired of it because I hate to be the person that drops all the shoes and people are like, damn it, I just wanted to be happy.
Oh, I know,
And
right? See, I feel you on that. Yeah,
this is
definitely.
it. One day I was at Chick-fil-A, and the little girls, they were just laughing and joking. And I was like, what if we could just leave people the fuck alone and let them stay in that little happy bubble and just not ever tell them anything about what's really going on? because I saw how they were just in so much joy that I thought, wow, like we're not like that anymore because we're always seeing so much. But these kids, they were just so happy. What should we do? Because everybody's thinking it's their job to wake people up, and then they go post something on Facebook, and then they're wondering why they're getting rocks thrown at them, because people really want stability and they want things to be the same. They need it nice and even, and they just really want to be happy.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should jerk the covers off of people. Just leave people in their bubble. Yeah, leave them.
I definitely feel you on that. I think some people are going to come to a stage in this human journey where, they're going to have some sort of a predetermined path, and they're going to go through, what we might call an awakening thing, and other people won't. And that's exactly the way it's supposed to be. But I also say that from an observational perspective of my belief is that we always come back here. That's literally what we do. Everyone's like, I'm not coming back to Earth. What are you talking about?
I laugh because I think that's BS.
Right? We always come back. We might go to a higher vibrational version of it, a lower vibrational version of it. We can literally reincarnate again in 1933 if that's what the soul chooses prior to coming in here. Time is irrelevant. Once you leave the physical human body, the time that we experience on Earth is completely and utterly different. You'll experience a lifetime in the blink of an eye, or, the opposite of that. And so I don't really put any emphasis or need to kind of prove to anyone that's not going down that path that any of this shit is real. It's funny because someone else asked me this recently, and, they're like, so what do you say to those people that, think that the very thing that you do professionally is fake? Because for a lot of us that do energy work or work in the psychic or spiritual realm, we're working with things that many people on Earth still do not even believe as being real. And so this person was like, what do you say to those people that you're fake? I say, those people are not my concern on any level. I am not here for that soul group. We're here for the people that find us and find value in what we do and are going through a different path. And I totally agree. I don't really see much use in trying to blow people up with like, let me tell you what it's really like. Although every now and then it has a big effect,
Yeah, this one guy, I saw his book. It was called "Fuck Jesus," and I was like, I don't have to go to such extremes. You know what I mean? Like, I don't. A lot of people too. They'll be like, they'll talk so much about other people's religion, and I'm like, if they're trying to do it, then hey, good luck. And then on that day when you're ready, or maybe that next lifetime, stop trying to think that you're better than other people because you got the inside scoop. That person is living out a lifetime, and that's their destiny to live out that lifetime. And maybe they are being the best Hindu they can be, or the best Catholic they can be, and whatever you feel it is. I don't, it's still the same idea of when people go to church and they say, well, this is the one only church, and if you don't go to this church, you're going to hell. So because you're spiritual and you're on the outside and telling those people that you're basically doing the same thing. You're still you just built a new church. It's just called the unchurch now in spirituality, where you're judging every damn body for everything they do. If they eat meat, don't eat meat. If they drink, they don't drink. I had a friend, she told me, she said, I wish I could smoke a cigarette and not be psychic. I wish I could drink and not be,
I wish I could
not
drink
be what I am. You know what I mean? But like people are saying, oh, you don't have this gift if you do this. And it's like, none of that is actually true.
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. And then, those sort of abilities are also not dependent in any form or fashion on whether you're a good or a bad person.
Not even a good or bad person. Because I see some people too, they're like, oh, this person has the gift and they have to be good because they have the gift. Even if they have a prediction, it doesn't make them necessarily good because they are good at predictions. Nothing applies. We want to apply rules to things that don't apply. I think it's really something else. But you said something about fight or flight the other day, being stuck in constant fight or flight.
Did I? Really?
Yes, you did. And you were saying how you can burn out. Because it's funny how you said that a couple of days ago. And I was talking to the drama teacher, and we were talking about using all your gears of emotion. Like if you're constantly in fear.
Yeah.
These muscles and these the chemicals in your body are actually overworked because you're constantly in fear.
Oh, yes. I was talking about the vagus nerve. Yes. Definitely. Which is one of the most powerful pathways for resetting that within the body. And I think it's an area that I've observed in doing what I do, that many people within our spiritual and kind of soul group right now have very, very weak vagal tone, which will affect many, many things in your journey, everything from your ability to rest and digest, to become grounded, to, reset yourself after intensity, to also use your intuitive abilities to gauge what is true, to gauge what is not true. It even has an effect on how you understand and perceive the emotions of other people. There's so many things, and that's just one of the cranial nerves. I don't know too much about the others, although I've been starting to. What I have found is that they each have their own individual senses, some psychic, some not psychic, but cranial nerves are incredibly important for kind of resetting elements of consciousness and awakening psychic abilities, which are within everyone. And, granted, I really only work with vagus nerve on a regular level because that's the one I understand the best. So I'm missing out on, all kinds of data, but for those that don't know, and maybe this is me turning into a weird anatomical off-ramp here, but the key really to kind of opening up those abilities that you'll hear myself and other people talk about, or one of the primary keys that every single living person can work with, is the non-physical anatomy. I think in learning about chakras, and especially the meridians within the body, learning the emotions and energies that are contained within, and learning how to, release it or change it or heal it, that will literally make you more psychic. And the cool thing is, or the bad thing is, it doesn't matter if you're a good or bad, right or wrong person. It's irrelevant. By working with and clearing non-physical anatomy, you will be directly activating your psychic abilities. And just, from a physical perspective, the vagus nerve is one of those ones that, because so many of us are stuck in constant fight or flight, that's one of the primary gateways. It's like we have to improve that tone, and we start to learn more about who and what we are. We have better, internal body coherence. And then from there, we can start working with a bunch of other stuff. But anyway.
I'm going to say this. Whenever you talk about this particular subject, I'm going to ask that you slow down and make extreme emphasis on these words, because you said that this overuse, that these gear, like it's trapped in a gear, but it blocks your understanding of recognition of the truth. Yep. It stops, say that part, it blocks you from understanding.
The vagus nerve in the body, which is the longest cranial nerve, it goes from, in your brain, stretches down both sides. You can access it right here and a number of other places. But for a lot of people, it's like a dowsing rod. It's like a internal polygraph detector. That, in conjunction with many other channels within the body, is one of the physical resonant pathways that will light up and vibrate as we learn to, determine emotions and truth and energies out there. And because we're constantly assaulted by so many toxins and forms of technology, spiritual and physical, it's one of the number one blocked up places. It's why people stay in this state of constant crisis and hypervigilance. It's not the only reason why, but when you're trying to activate, intuitive ability, or just come to a stage in which you can let go of the past few years and move into a new chapter of yourself, that's one of those places that will hold so much data and so much trauma. And the easiest way to open it, a lot of people are like, what, really? The easiest way to improve your vagal tone is through deep breathing and, honestly, singing, toning, long withdrawn breaths. It's really easy to open it up. It's just, we don't get a lot of emphasis on those things. I would say that and the lymphatic system are two of the primary physical keys. In fact, when you're trying to discern truth, maybe alongside some of the, vagus nerve kind of thoughts and stimulation and things that we would receive from that, one of the other reasons why people often can't really tell what's what, or is this real or is that real, it doesn't really have to do with stages of learning or things that they haven't picked up yet. In some cases, it's because the lymphatic system is literally clogged up like a dirty fish tank. And I've used this metaphor a lot. You can have an incredibly dirty fish tank and all the fish are still chilling in there, but you can't see what's going on. It's full of all kinds of shit, but they'll still be rolling around. And so when we finally clear the lymphatic system, you will perceive even people that you turn to for your knowledge, like the spiritual influencers. And, I can think of a few of them, both male and female, that are dictating reality for a lot of people. When you clear your lymphatic system and start to mobilize, the energy of the vagus nerve, I promise you, there will come a day where you will look at those people and you'll go,
what have
whoa,
I done?
how did I never see them? What? And
you said so much.
Sorry.
No. I'm just saying, like, the thought of what you just said is like way so powerful. Number one, this is basically your throat where you speak the truth, and your heart is being cut off from your head. And so that's a big problem. That's a traffic jam going on in that's like 4 chakras. So then also, when you're saying being stuck in fight or flight, one thing that I noticed is that people bond by trauma, right? And they attach to the idea that I am right and you are wrong, and I have to have a common enemy. They bond on common enemy, and they bond on trauma. And then this is how they become this big negative group. And so this is what I call shadow cloning, or shadow puppets.
Yeah.
When you're trapped in the darkness and you have your shadow and others recognize your shadow, they know what buttons to push to ignite you to act, right?
Yeah.
And so now they can get you to act on their agenda, because they picked out where your shadow is, and they know how to make you move and box and fight. And then they send you on out to do the dirty work. And this is what I'm calling shadow puppets.
That's a good way.
A lot of people who aren't working on these energies inside them, they're not working on their chakras. They're not working on healing their trauma or their past. And they're just out here trying to look spiritual and act spiritual, and they don't know that they're wide open for the trigger. And these people you think are your friends, you're basically just making trauma bonds. Like, you don't marry somebody with a trauma bond, because your relationship is based on trauma.
I am.
So you got friendships that are just based on trauma, and here you are. And guess what? I won't tell you the truth if you don't tell me the truth. I won't make you heal if you don't make me heal. And so now we're just a big dirty fish tank.
Totally.
A big dirty arm. You're an army for darkness, not an army for the light. And this was something I wanted to actually talk about at one point, but basically the way you said it, it actually helped really give the reason why, I have to be right and you have to be wrong. And I have to constantly have someone to fight. I have to pick people to fight with so that I have a purpose, basically.
Maybe we all do that, though, because I have observed myself doing that as well. Even lately, it's like everyone's going to choose weird battles and things to like.
True.
I get all.
When it comes to your routine, you're like, I got to grind.
Constantly, right? I think it's part of the.
I'm in the rat race. These things.
I think
and sometimes we're the enemy of ourselves because we hate ourselves, and we're our own enemy. And so we got to defeat ourselves, right?
Oh, I very much see that in my own life. I have been the number one cause of all of the dysfunction and strife and difficulty. I mean that very, very sincerely. I have never defined myself as a victim. And, maybe there's been stages where I could have, but I was like, no, I realize these are things that I'm choosing or bringing. And sometimes they're karmic, but even, the conflicts that we have. And I'm a person who, will get very opinionated about a number of things in people. And, I think it's good for me to be totally open about it. It's not always the best approach, but it's like, I think it's really good to allow ourselves to go through those and, to realize when we're wrong and, all the ins and outs of it. But anyway, you know what I'm saying?
I do. I'm maxed out. It's funny how I'm looking at my last question And my last question was answered somewhere
Oh,
in
you
the
had
middle.
questions.
Yeah, I did. I kind of like thought of some things where I knew I wanted to talk to you about because you're that kind of person that can answer those kind of questions. Yeah, because you don't paint all the fences white.
I definitely don't. I would always check that little box on that like personality test, they give you when you go in for treatment. And it's like, I am comfortable being friends with people who do many wrong things. And I remember going, true. Like, it's like, I will see both sides and that's okay. It's like, I have no problem viewing it all. And some people get really weird about that, but
You got something really cool going on this weekend, and I think I want to check it out. What is that?
Oh, all right. Okay, so we do a regular Patreon group that's coming up this Saturday. We're in our third year, and I've said this many times. I never expected it to continue, but it's been the most regular part of my life. And it's funny because we don't really advertise it that much. It's not a thing that I'm out there blowing everybody up about. But myself and my wife and Nora do a monthly group with people over Patreon where we do readings for everyone. We do energy work with everyone. We're doing 2 meetings a month right now, one where we do readings, another one where we're doing more dedicated energy work. But we have our next group coming up this Saturday at 4 p.m. It's only $10. You can head over to Patreon for people that feel guided, that want to get a reading. And I've said this before, I may be shooting myself in the foot one day if a lot of people show up, but that's the whole idea. You come in there and everybody gets a little bit of time. Everybody gets a card pulled. Everybody gets a moment where we focus in on your energy and go, okay, what do we need to know?
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
It's not that we always come up with great waves of truth. Sometimes it's just surface level things, but the community has shown us over the past 3 years that they get great value from it, because for some reason people keep showing up, and I'm not a person that's on everyone's show. Hardly anyone knows who I am or what I do. You know what I mean? I'm not on the cool list. We're not on anyone's events. You know what I mean? We're like the background players, and yet somehow this thing that we do keeps going. And so this Saturday at 4 p.m.
Like Southern Comfort.
Maybe kind of in a weird way. It just keeps rolling. But.
And I met your wife. She's an amazing. You guys have an amazing dynamic, and I don't want to make it. I asked her before, but she said no. I don't do video. I don't do video. So
she's actually the real. I know it sounds dumb, but she's actually the real intuitive. She's the real healer. She's the one that has the real information. And most of the ideas for what I do come from her through some way or another. And I'm like, I have now decided I'm going to blank, and she'll be like in the background going, maybe you should do this. And so I think she thrives on being in the background. Although I've noticed that's changing. You know what I mean? Some people genuinely don't want to be out there. I've had to learn to do that, because it's the only way that, I will ever get seen in this world is by inserting myself in there, especially in the community that we're in, because I don't use the right keywords. I'm not out there trying to sell everybody on being in a program. I have not chosen to redefine my trauma as a space story and I'm selling it to the world. You know what I mean? So it's like we get passed up for a lot of stuff. But what's cool is that in being completely authentic over the past 7 years, there's been a really cool group of people from literally all over the world that have shown up. And it's honestly been the greatest honor of my life. So anyway, we just keep doing what we do, and somehow it keeps working.
I know what you mean, because sometimes I look at my video and I'm like, why don't you just shut the fuck up?
Actually, okay, hold on.
Thank you
for saying that, for real, because honestly, I look at myself and I'm like, I do the same thing. I'm like, oh my, really? Damn.
Shut the fuck up.
God.
I'm so tired of your voice. You're so loud. I'm like,
it's okay.
I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, who wants to talk to me? Like,
you got to be able to look at yourself like that. I think that's a sign of growth. Like when you can look at yourself and go, okay, that was actually really dumb. But then you look at other things and go, damn, that was okay. All right. But it's like you got to be able to self edit in some form. And that's how you know when you're actually growing. Like if you can't do that and like look at yourself and go, that was a horrible idea. I wish I never said that. It's like, how are you going to get better?
I'm constantly, I was on the what would Jesus do, like with my whole life. I'm looking at everything. Should I have said that? Should I have done that? Oh, I shouldn't have done. And it's like, no, stand up for yourself. It's okay. Like sometimes Sometimes all week, like last week, I was looking at myself like, why did you say that? Even though everything I said was true, it was like just because it's true, it doesn't mean you need to say it sometimes, you know? And so sometimes I was just really looking at myself like, just because it was true, did you need to say it? Could you have avoided that? Could you have just shut the up and avoided that? And then I have to pat myself on the back and be like, bitch, it's too late now. You already did it. So fuck it, it's over.
No, actually, I thank you for saying that, because I do that to myself constantly. And I'm like,
all the
I could have
time.
said that way differently. You know what I mean? Half the time on Facebook, no one looks at my shit unless I say some inflammatory thing. And so I'm like, you know what I mean? I'll look back and go, oh, okay, you know, but it's like we got to be able to look at ourselves and edit and be critical of, you know, that. And it's, you know, that's kind of how we grow. People who can't do that, I think, will get stuck in stages of ego, and they'll never move past places where they are now because they can't really look at themselves, which goes back to a true belief in my heart. And that is that knowledge of self in the spiritual journey is the number one thing. It is absolutely paramount to understanding who we are and what we're meant to do here, what we're capable of. And so know thyself first above all else.
Laura said, I love you both. It's trigger season. It really is. I was like, oh my God. One day I was just sitting there. I was like, you should have hit him with a car. And I was like, whoa, like what? That's not me. I don't normally wish people get hit by cars, but you know, not for a long time anyway. I mean, I don't know. I used to be this person in traffic where I used to think, I wish I had these gigantic truck with big bumpers, and if somebody were to cut me off, then I could just take this big truck and go bam.
Right
Or
over.
I've actually thought of shooting paintballs in people's window and
Right.
like blinding them because they were such jerks. But you know, I've grown out of it. So when I see myself flashing back, I'm like, oh my God, what retrograde is it? Like
it makes sense. So you've also been a warrior in a lot of lifetimes. So that means that you're going to have a literal strand or an energetic like connection that if you choose to engage with it will actually help you do those things. It will show you how to make it happen. It's very, very real. It's like you can tune into it and you're like, oh, I know how to do this and do that. And
because you said that, when I was in school, I used to think about things that happened during the day. This is elementary school. And I'd be thinking of boop, boop, boop. I have this thing too, where even I can dream about, like if I'm going to have an interview, I dream about the questions. Like, so I have like a role player thing that I go through at night sometimes, where it walks me through like what to do the next day sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. So sorry that we're going on and on, but you need to hear this then, because you're talking about a very, very distinct ability that I've been working with dedicatedly for the past couple months. And so I would say, first off, I recommend picking up the book, The Art of Dreaming by Carlos Castaneda. If you're not familiar with it, I pray to God that you will look at it. And you might not get it at first, because someone tried to turn me on to Carlos Castaneda years ago. And I was like, what is this shit? I could not pick it up. And year before last, somebody approached me with it again. They're like, you should read this. This is real. This is true knowledge. And I was like, really? But that book alone, The Art of Dreaming, will help you begin to learn how to crystallize and form a dreaming body that will help you learn how to shape reality around you, how to begin to traverse other realms, how to begin to awaken and connect with all sorts of energies in this world that are rightful. They're part of our human journey. It helps us decode those things. And it talks about the gateways to dreaming and the process of kind of, you know, just having greater effect over your reality. And so one of the things they talk about in that book is, as you move through these gateways in dreaming, you do start having experiences like that, where it'll be mirrored from the real world. And people that learn how to harness that and become lucid and conscious in those states, it's mind-blowing what can be attained. I'm not a very good example of it because I'm still very new at it, but just reading that book alone will help you move through multiple gateways of dreaming. And it's absolutely.
Ali says it's a great book.
Cool. So, there we go. Somebody knows out there.
Yeah. So somebody heard it. God. I used to have the thing where I would say, okay, I got to go back into this dream. When I was little, I had way more control. Yep. I would go back and be like, I'm going to go back this time. I'm going to move faster. Instead of going this way, I'm going to go that way. I don't know who I was fighting or running from, but I used to like reinsert myself into the same dream over and over again.
That's a very distinct power. I think that's the third gateway of dreaming, where you start to retain direct control over the self in those places, and it's very hard. I have not been able to maintain it, but you will, it's like you will begin to be able to control that environment and bring in people and places and events from your modern day world and anyway, it just changes how we perceive.
Nice.
So watch out.
Thank you, because I think maybe it's time too. It's probably time, and that's why we had that conversation. So does this have anything to do with any of your remote viewing? Does that kind of run in alongside the remote viewing class that you're about to do in September?
Thank you for mentioning that. Honestly, no. No, it doesn't. Well, you know what? Honestly, maybe it does. I started remote viewing accidentally. Like a lot of things psychically, I didn't know that I could do it until one day I was in this online group with some random dude, and they're like, let's do like a remote viewing thing. You're gonna view me at home and I'm gonna view you at home. And I was like, really? Okay, cool. And I just tried it, and it was like I nailed it on a level that freaked that dude out, and he actually doesn't talk to me seriously does not talk to me anymore, in part due to some shit like that. And so I was shown very early on that it was just a thing that I could do. But I have read through the CIA controlled remote viewing training manual. I think it was great and fun.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, it's available online. You can get it anywhere. But I've also looked at a number of other kind of manners in which remote viewing has been taught, and I didn't really connect with any of them. And so one of the things I decided to do, honestly, people have been talking with me about it for the past 2 years, and I've been mentioning it, but it's a thing that I have done organically since day one. But we're teaching a slightly different version of it, more individualized practice in which we're starting with the internal body, which I think for people that are trying to unlock their real psychic abilities, like I said earlier, know thyself first. And so when we start to open up something like remote viewing, one of the easiest ways to do it is to work with the self, to learn how to discern how to view emotions, how to view our organs, how to understand where density is within the body, which is incredibly simple. Every living being can do it. And it's very different from controlled remote viewing. But yeah, we're going to be starting a course on September 17th, where it's going to be 3 to 4 weeks. There's a bonus week, but it's really 3 weeks. But we're going to be just taking people through the process that I use, which is very, very different. It has a lot of the parameters of, looking at senses and recording them and, learning how to perceive things. But I think I practice a more spiritualized woo-woo version of it, in which we're also going to be opening up chakras and a number of things that I have noticed in my world have helped me begin to view those things, because it's one of the most easily awakened abilities. Truly, any living person can do it. But we're in a soul group right now where people want to claim supremacy, and everyone wants to be special, and you know what I mean? It gets easily lost in a lot of ego. And so
everyone wants to die. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die for it,
Right. Everyone wants to have all kinds of truth, but they don't want to look at themselves. So in this class, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be remote viewing each other. I've already had a number of people write to me and go, I don't know. What if somebody's looking at me in the shower? And I'm like, well, first off, that's really not how that works. And secondly, there's a lot of things that are also involved in that process that, while it's possible, you know what I mean? That's not a factor of what we're doing. We're not here to violate anyone's sovereignty. We're here to teach this modality so that people can have a greater control and understanding of what makes us tick and what we're feeling and how to change and how to activate. And, sure, you could always use it for evil, like anything, right? You know what I mean? You could take the hammer and hammer a nail or smack somebody in the head. It's going to be your choice what you do with it. And so
don't visualize, but when you said, we're going to be we're not looking at people in the shower. It was so funny. I was listening to it and I was in the shower and I was like, oh, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
Your example was, we're not looking in the shower, but I was in there when I was listening to it.
Well,
there was something else too, where you said another word during the cast, and I was listening to it and I was saying the same word at the same time. And I was in my bedroom and I was just like talking to myself and I was like, this is so funny. This is too.
It's a really good sign. No, for real though, that's a sign that you're tapping into that wavelength of collective consciousness, where you'll be saying a word before the other person does. You'll perceive a thing in your mind's eye before it's even discussed, which honestly, I think is a testament to your ability to tap into those wavelengths already. And the truth is, a lot of people don't need a remote viewing class. I never had any formal training in anything psychic. I never took a tarot class, nothing like that. And so
I heard you say that. This made me think about people watching. Like, had you ever been this person to sit down and watch a person and try to guess
Yes.
what they really are and who they really are. I used to do that too. Yeah.
I still do. I'll say one thing. I know we're going on, and we'll probably close soon. But
Yeah.
one of the most useful things you can do for people that are starting to learn how to psychically view or perceive things in your non-local area. If you live, and this is going to sound dumb, but if you live in a neighborhood where there's houses in a community, go for a walk at night by yourself. Don't make it weird, but just walk down a street and pause in front of each dwelling place. Take a deep breath in and just ask yourself what you perceive. For many of us, there's a great big dense layer of our own thought forms that immediately surround us. But as you practice that, what you'll notice is, and we've worked with other people in classes on this exact technique, what it does is it gives you a really good way of gauging controlled environments of energy. And what I noticed when I started doing that on a regular basis is that I would walk past people's houses or businesses, and I would start to pick up very distinct data. It like gives you an energetic whiff of what is within your environment. And it's very, very useful. And so observation and just kind of testing those things in the real world is critical, but we don't always get to have feedback. And so I think that's where sometimes classes come in, because we're going to be meeting with people. They're going to have partners in this group. And it's like, you're going to do remote viewing on me. I'm going to do one on you. And so you get a different layer of feedback, but anybody can do it. And yeah, watch out. I'll go on and on, but.
And yeah, I think this is why the whole purpose of TV, so people can shut up
Totally.
and focus in and on what is programmed in front of us, for sure. And how do people contact you for your services?
Oh yeah, we are at rememberyourmission.com. Rememberyourmission.com. We're also on YouTube at Remember Your Mission. We're stuck in a weird algorithm cap right now. The AI won't let us move past about 6,500. But I'm really grateful, because I never thought 6,000 people would ever subscribe to anything I did. So I'm like, well, at least that many people cared, even if they're all bots. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, at least that many. But yeah, we're in a weird path. We can't go past it. But you guys can find me on YouTube regularly, and also Patreon at Blue Flame Collective. So that's it.
I love that. Yeah, I totally forgot what I was gonna say again, but that's that's my life. So anyway, this was great hanging out with you, and I was so glad, because we were right next to each other, but then we didn't have time to really like sit with each other. So
that's okay. It's always weird at events. There's so many people and stuff and energies and.
I seen his power, y'all. I touched something on his table, and he said, "Someone."
Okay, no, I will be real. That is a thing.
Like Batman.
That's a thing that anyone can do. And sorry, I know we're like going on and on, but I'll just tell people, you can legitimately tie an energetic string to things that are yours. You can place energy in an area. And as you practice that over time, it is literally like an alarm system where you'll go boom, okay, boom. And that's what it was. I was like, I feel, because I've been in a lot of events where people will literally just take your stuff and push it on the side and literally knock you out of the way and take your area. And that is a real, people that do these will know. They're like, yeah, people get crazy and possessive, and it was weird. And so, no, really, I will literally tie an energetic string to things. And it's like, I will be like, ding, okay, go check this out. So it's just
I think that happened the day when someone busted the window out my car. I had parked my car over here for like 5 days at this church while my roof was getting done. And I went out there and I said, you know what? I'm going to move it now. And it was just, I had just missed it. They busted the window out and I was like, what? But something told me that night to just go get it. Go get it. Well, I think we do it with our kids though. Like some people, when they have kids and stuff, they know, like trigger, or with their siblings or something like that. But it was great hanging out with you. We're going to hang up, y'all. And I mean, just like, subscribe, share, please. I don't see that many views, even though I know the YouTube monsters. I love what Robert said yesterday. He said, take the views and multiply it by 65.
I believe that actually. I wonder what website he was talking about, because I think that's
I wanted to know too.
A lot of us. Like really though, that's a factor. There's incredible suppression, and a lot of people say it's not real until you see it, and you're like, how is this possible? How are we?
I'm gonna tell people it has to be possible, because when I walked up that convention they had in Orlando last year, why would anybody fucking know who I am if only 20 people watched me? There
See?
were people that walked, they were like, oh my God, you're just looking. And I was like, huh? What? You know, and Jermaine will tell me from Consciousness War, he'll say, girl, no, hundreds of people are watching you.
Mhm.
Hundreds of people are watching you. You just don't know. And I was like, for real? But that made me feel good last night. I was like, okay, great. But please do share, because the little monsters, they're trying to eat our numbers up like Pac-Man and a power pellet. So they're trying to make us into ghosts. All right.
Well, thank you.